Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the role of a universal skills framework in the future of work, an Unleashed webinar in association with Eightfold, the talent intelligence platform. I'm John Kennard, editorial content manager of Unleash, the business intelligence platform for HR professionals, and I'm your host for today's session. Now, many organizations don't know what skills they need now or for the future, or how to develop them. Equally, employees don't know the skills they should learn or the career paths available to them, which oftentimes results in employees voting with their feet through lack of motivation or progression. There's also plenty of evidence of where a poor understanding of skills required for new talent has led to poor hiring decisions and the consequential implications that ensue. Evidently, many organizations are struggling to make the shift to skills as the currency of their talent ecosystem. At the same time, legacy competency models and job architectures still abound. Can the two exist? Should they exist? In this session with Unleash and Eightfold AI, we'll discuss how organizations can have just that. We'll also identify tangible ways companies can establish a common language around skills to help break down silos in talent management. We are delighted to welcome three great speakers to the webinar today to delve into this topic and offer cutting-edge insight and practical solutions for businesses of all sizes and industries. First up, we have Bernd Schmitz, Director of Emerging Talent at Bayer. Second, we have Heike Bauer, Global Director of Learning at Bayer. And last but by no means least, we have Ryan Smith, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Eightfold AI, who will be diving into this topic today. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. We'll have a Q&A session at the end after the presentation. Do feel free to ask questions in the Q&A or the chat as we go along, and I'll make a note so we can gather them all up at the end for the Q&A session when that starts. For now, though, Ryan, it's over to you.
Awesome, John. Thank you. Great setup there. And hello, everyone. Excuse me. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're calling in from. Great to be here. Really excited to talk about the role of dynamic skills in the future of work. As everyone on the call is well aware, we are in the midst of myriad challenges for talent acquisition and talent management leaders today. You know, we got labor shortage, the great reshuffle, supply chain slowdown, and of course, COVID seems to linger. Today we're really excited to talk about how to unlock a skills framework with AI to really help solve the challenges of today and also prepare for tomorrow. Like John said, my name is Ryan Smith, Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Eightfold. I'll be your moderator today, but more importantly, I'd like to welcome the stars of the show. We have Bernd Schmitz and Heike Bauer from Bayer. Bernd, let's start with you. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Bayer, and Heike, if you could do the same?
Sure. I'm Heike. I'm the Global Learning Director at Bayer. So what I do, I partner with our divisions and our global strategy hat to define how we do want to learn at Bayer. So what's the type of learning experience we want to give to employees, and how can we support the business building the right skills that we actually need for the future.
Very good. Bernd, you're up.
Yeah, that was a short one. I will do a longer one, I think. So I'm delighted to be here in that call. Thank you very much. I'm with Bayer since many years and more the last 15 years in the area of talent acquisition. So all of the thing about employer branding, talent marketing, emerging talents, professional hiring, and so on and so on. So, and in my hobby, I'm also very eager to understand new technologies and innovations. So therefore, in 2009, I had launched the first Bayer YouTube channel, official ones, and the first Facebook fan page in that time was absolutely brand new to our company, who is a more classical style of company, and all these innovations in the past, like chatbots, virtuality, augmented reality. And nowadays, the last 3 years, I'm concentrating in my, I would say, voluntary near-time job about artificial intelligence and AI to use in HR, which is really game-changing. And even I have a lot of passion for that, to see what of the value we can go in the future with a definitely new type of technology, which support us as Bayer to make the right talent decisions at the right time in the right order.
Awesome. Well, very impressive. Heike and Bern, thanks for introducing yourselves. So, we talked about, when we were talking about the content for this webinar, we thought it would be really important to start with what a skill is and maybe define it for the audience. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Heike. Can you educate us here?
Absolutely. We sort of we thought we keep the definition for this call really simple and land on it's an ability to do an activity or a job well, especially because you have practiced it. Now, the interesting things with skills is I guess we've probably been talking about skills, at least in learning, for a long time, because they're really the essence of also what makes a competency, or as stated above, an ability to do a job. What's interesting is that now also with the way we learn and we communicate, where we can start tagging things, the focus of on skills has probably, I would say, renewed. It has a renaissance. So literally any activity or thing you do, you could break it down into skills, and into which are the different little things you need to be able to do in order, for instance, to, I don't know, drive a car or cook a recipe or work in marketing. But again, you can what you then do is to do so. It requires a lot of little things. If we talk marketing, for instance, you need to be able to maybe come up with creative ideas of how to communicate about a product, how to present a product, how to budget for your marketing. So all these are skills. So it's literally all the little things. What you can see here is a list of the top 25 skills, and what we've seen in the future, of course, is that when we think of jobs for probably a number of years, the skills you needed, for instance, to be a marketeer, have been pretty stable. But now, of course, with the technological advancements and also digitalization, the skills that are needed to do a job have changed, and they keep changing. And the pace at which these skills change and new skills emerge and some other skills become obsolete is increasing. So there are studies out there where probably the World Economic Forum, for instance, predicted that 42%, so that's nearly half of the skills that we need for in the year 2022, so that's next year's, sort of like don't exist or are not, people don't have yet. Here's some stats. Again, the World Economic Forum is a great source where they've done a lot of research in their Future of Work report 2020. They interview companies and ask them what are some of their current problems with skills, and literally it doesn't matter what research you cite, but the big finding is that companies don't know. They have difficulties predicting the skills of the future. They're unclear if their employees actually have the skills that you need, and most companies feel that they're not really up for the future. At the same time, the other stat you can see here, that's the phenomenon I've mentioned before, is roles or job families still exist. Like take marketing, for examples, but the skills that you need to do these jobs have changed. At the same time, some traditional roles actually disappear as we just started to do things differently. So the skills that people have in their current roles maybe move into different types of roles. So it all becomes a very complex and changing picture that is hard for companies to understand. So whenever you ask the question, is your company set for the future? You have the right talent in the right place with the right skills. Few companies currently feel in a position to comfortably say yes, simply because the whole job market and the skill market, if you want, is changing so quickly. Again, we know that we do a lot with skills, and companies traditionally have been working with skills for a long time. Data, AI can actually help a lot to sort of like make sense of what are the skills needed and what skills can be transferred from one role to another. But the problem is that also the knowledge of the skills that our employees currently have, and how good these skills are, how deep, it typically resides in a lot of different places. Yeah. So we have at Bayer, at least, and I'd assume that's the same in other companies. We have a whole lots of systems. We have a learning management system, for instance, that tells you about what trainings people did and maybe developed skills. We have competency models. We have data and succession planning. We have job architectures that describes the roles that we have and what skills you need in order to complete them. We have our whole suite of recruitment and talent acquisition software. We do assessments, so all that creates a lot of data, but they sit in different places, and it's very, very difficult also for us in HR to sort of like keep an overview. So again, I sometimes get that question where business leads come and say, oh, can you please help us? We want to, in consumer goods, we sort of like want to develop new products. And now do we have the people that we need? And then yeah, I say maybe. And what we need to do is very cumbersome because the information just isn't there. So in the past, it appeared to be easier to say, yes, we're well staffed. Today, there's a lot of data out there, but typically it resides in different places, and it's difficult to get hold of it. And again, the new model of work is difficult to support that way.
Yeah, absolutely, Heike. That's fascinating stuff, and clearly plenty of challenges out there in sort of thinking about laying the foundation and building a skills framework. And I think, excuse me, and broadly speaking, I think these challenges, present new questions that need to be answered. So, for example, how do we enable true talent mobility, not just within your employee's current swim lane, but perhaps outside of that swim lane? How can we support the non-traditional career pathing while retaining our competency models, which we're going to get to a little bit later? And then thirdly, really the underlying foundation to the above, how should we establish skills as a currency and one that evolves in the marketplace? So I want to kind of bring our experts back in, and Heike, I'm going to direct this question towards you, but Bern, I invite you to chime in as well. Heike, how are you kind of looking at skills at Bayer specifically? What are some of the opportunities it's creating for you?
Yeah, again, I mean, you mentioned talent mobility. I mean, I think what we really need to do, and that's the fascinating things about skills is, in the past, when we did succession planning, for instance, we really looked at people's experiences. We said, this person has done job A and job B, and probably this is why they can also do job C, because this is how a classical career worked. Now, we all know these classical careers get rarer as we speak, as new roles emerge, and also people have different, do more horizontal moves or want to move around and select different kinds of experiences. Now, skills are a fantastic vehicle to then discuss the job fit or the mobility aspect of a person, because rather than saying, because you've always worked in talent acquisition, your next role should be in talent acquisition too, I might say, because you work in talent acquisition, you bring certain skills, like you can communicate, your experience with running PR campaigns, you have some knowledge of AI, yeah. So hey, here's the whole range of opportunities for you, maybe in the area of marketing and sales. And skills are a fantastic conversation starter also for talent mobility or succession planning discussions. So they really can change the aspect, could change the way that we manage talent. Beyond the traditional way of looking at skills as a sort of like a trait you look at in learning and training, where you say, okay, here are skills you need to do a certain role. So I think it really offers up new perspectives for the organization. At the same time, of course, it's great also for an employee, because if I get beyond these silos and boundaries where I think, oh, because I've always worked in HR and in talent development and learning, the only roles I can do are here. No, it's not, because maybe the skills that I have would also qualify me for quite different roles. Like, let's say, I could probably become a business analyst, because I know a little bit about analyzing data, right? So I think it's really changing the way, or it has the potential to change the way that we deal and trade talent. And I hope at Bayer we're moving down that road. Maybe Bernd, you can talk a little bit more.
Sure. So there are many dimensions we can open that discussion. So why is skills so important? So in the past, Bayer was also one of those companies who looked on experience history to decide up on the next job. It could be the internal question or internal movement, or even the external hiring. But that has recently changed for more or less most of our opportunities, which is not only jobs, which are also projects, so short-term assignments without a deployment, just to be at 20% of my capacities for the next 3 months, together with some communication colleagues and some finance colleagues working on a communication topic. And I, myself, as an HR guy, with some experiences with my skills in the past, combined with my personal aspiration, what kind of skills I would like to have in the future for my next opportunities, which could be a next position or lateral move or a move outside my HR function. These are the dimensions which we need to define what is the next opportunity for me. And here's the thing, that our people learning that very fast. Then even also in their external communication, when they are starting to using LinkedIn, for instance, they also seeing their skills mentioned from LinkedIn, where you can evaluate and promise the skills. And we as a company seeing a lot of huge information from our own employees outside in LinkedIn, but we do not have a grip on that kind of information. It's a little bit sad. So therefore, we have to investigate and also empower our employees, that they are open to share their skills, their background, their past skill, which they have learned, and their aspirations together to offer them the right opportunity for the right time, right? And with we call them the Career Hub. It's also a part of our AI talent approach for the future, is that every employee has a self-service access to see what are my current skills, what is then directly after editing or upgrading my internal profile in the Career Hub, what are the next opportunities for me, where I can see the right mentor for a good mentorship relation, where I can gain new insights and maybe a skill, or where is the next learning opportunity coming on the learning experience platform, or where is my next job, which might fit to my future aspirations. So everything is talking about now how we can leverage these currency skill to make really opportunities for the future possible.
Bernd, you brought up a good point, which I hadn't necessarily thought about before, which is not only can skills be applied to other swim lanes or other jobs, but also there's the aspirational element. There's a desire to explore those other jobs, perhaps, driven by the millennial generation. They want to round out their career and be constantly fulfilled. But really interesting there. So what's kind of I think the $1 million question that a lot of the audience on the call is asking themselves, like, what is the biggest challenge? Heike, you mentioned just broadly speaking some of the challenges, but for Bayer, what is the biggest challenge to realizing some of these opportunities to unlock the skills?
There's actually a great question in the chat, which goes into that direction, which is sort of like, oh, and how do you establish skills and measure them across a company? And I guess this is exactly getting us into the challenges, right? Because especially as skills change so fast, plus, and they're so let's say they're very granular. Yeah, it's a very small currency unit, like your your pence and cents, right? It's very difficult to get that overview of skills. And when you ask me sort of like what are the skills that are needed, for instance, for a sales or marketing role, or for project management, right? I couldn't even answer, because again, it depends a lot on the specific role, on the context, right, that a person is working in. The one problem with skills is that they're a very small unit, and there's many of them. It's difficult talking about them. And also when we talk about assessment, yeah, the questions: do people in my company have the skills they need, yeah, to do certain roles, or achieve certain goals? It becomes difficult to say that, also because skills have different namings. I know that there's projects out there, for instance, in Europe, to drive a sort of like a uniform skill taxonomy that then all companies can use in order to communicate and assess. But I think this is very, very difficult to establish, as new skills emerge every day. So probably what you need to do is establish something like we have job families. Yeah, you need to have skill families, right? To say those are all skills that have something to do with, communication, or sales, yeah, or finance, or and then depending on what you're looking for, you might have more categories in there. But this is one start. The other question is a question of measurement. How do I measure skills, right? How do I assess them? And again, traditionally, when you had your competency models, or where you have sort of like your company values, or what have you, some key behaviors, you define these, yeah, and then you set up a scheme, yeah, a metrics to evaluate. Now, I think with the amount of skills that we have, defining a common way of measuring is becoming very difficult too. Also because we don't know who has these skills. So again. So the traditional way is clear. You have your assessments and you run them. I think in the future, this is again where also we need to be more creative and use big data. So software or artificial intelligence that can look at pattern and run assessments on, maybe make combinations, use the data that we have in the company. We mentioned before, we have performance management systems. Yeah, we have systems that describe a person's role. Yeah, so we have systems where people enter information on their previous experiences and their skills. Yeah. So probably looking at all these data, yeah, data from learning experience platforms, could give you an indication how skilled people are in your organization. Now, as a human, it's extremely difficult to sit there and compare all these data. But then for artificial intelligence, it is possible to do that, because algorithms are way better than we are in looking at a lot of data and trying to see patterns and establish that. So I guess this is where I'm hoping to find a solution in the future.
Let me jump my thought in that, sorry, because in the past, so even in the last millennium, or last century, 1995, we introduced our first global job catalog, for Bayer. Was 598 global jobs into 69 job families with 16 job groups, the numbers from the actual day. But if you have established such kind of a huge job catalog with job description, in that moment, if you deploy the job catalog, it's already outdated, because It's not up to date. It cannot go in that in these fast pace that the labor market or the job markets are moving. I found an old Access database on the Bayer shared volume, 1995, where there was an IT job called AS400, mainframe instructor. You have to be in my age as 50 years so to know what is an AS400, yeah? And even they have programmed that system with a COBOL 64 language, yeah? It's totally outdated. Nobody knows along. There are only 2 or 3 machines in Germany in some museums, right? But those jobs are still in the global job catalog because not updated. So now here's the thing. When we're trying to bring a catalog or a framework which we try to maintain, we have lost the game before we started already. So therefore, we are building up on a global data model, which have been feeded with some million of data. So indeed, it's more than 1 billion profiles with career paths, with their current positions, combined with roughly 1.5 million skills. So we're talking about a 60 billion of data point system, which is provided luckily with Eightfold. That's the reason why we're working together. And we ensure with the deep learning technology that every skill who has only a 2 years lifetime will be also up to date, because the AI is able to understand skills in their context. You know, the project manager example from Heike is brilliant, because, you know, a project manager working in a photographer area has quite different skills than a project manager for IT. And that is the thing. An AI have to understand the skill not by the word, by the name. It has to understand the skill by the context of a role, of an opportunity, of a learning, of a mentorship, of you name it. You know, that is quite important. And in the future, so many new jobs will arise, which we never thought about in the back, in the time back. They are still at Bayer. I know some of the guys who are now cloud computing architects, and they have started at Bayer as an AS400 IT instructor, right? But the jobs has dramatically changed, and we cannot build up on a local or a single or a Bayer-owned framework. Forget it. It will not work, because we are part of the working world. We are part on sharing talents between our companies. So we have to build up on a fast-moving and fast-learning technology.
And that's the other thing, because traditionally, and I have a background, I say that, but my first jobs have been in recruitment. And that's the other thing. What worked in the past is you have a job, and then there is a manager who has tens and thousands of years of experience in that role. They're going to help you assess if the person's right fit for the role, if they bring the skills right needed to do the job well. Now, in the future, what we're seeing today already is that I hire people into my team with skills where I can just simply not judge if they can do the job well, because I have no understanding of that, what that role actually entails. And also, we're getting into an area where we're hiring in people. Well, we hire them because we do not have the expertise ourselves. So we're not able to do the classical skills assessment, where an expert sits and comes in and asks some questions and then says, oh yeah, I would do it the same way. This is a great guy or girl. And so again, I guess this is where the role of AI is becoming so important, because we will need to put some trust also in findings, just as Bernd described it, that come from external data to make these types of assessments, because the old ways that we used to do simply are not going to help us anymore in the future. So again, when I did recruitment way back, in 20 years ago, at the start of my career, I remember that we had people who screened CVs, and they were the experts to make that judgment call if a person brings the right skill for a position. And then you had experts who were specialists for sales jobs, what have you. But again, for today, I think skills there's so many new skills, and this is exactly the problem. Yeah, it's we need to rely on different sources to make these judgment calls.
No, thank you. I think those are some brilliant insights. Thank you for sharing with the group. I personally, I think I'm becoming overwhelmed thinking about the problem that you two have been tasked with. It's a lot to take in, a lot of data, a lot of input, a lot of moving parts. So before we move on to some more content here, John, any questions we're getting from the audience we'd like to ask our panelists here?
There's a lot. So let me dig in. Where should we start?
Maybe start with one or two.
Sure thing. Okay. Question from Daniela. How do you measure skills in an integrated way to leverage insights to drive development in terms of self-assessment, third-party assessments, manager assessments? Question to Heike.
So when it comes to the proficiency level, so the question here is how you define an assessment. Usually we have a scale 1 to 5, and there are also ideas to grow up to 1 to 9 or 1 to 10. So when you have a self-assessment first, and then you have your manager assessment in the comparison to see, okay, there are differences. That helps a discussion to define, really to make the right decision or the right proficiency level. Then you have at least also the opportunity to ask peers to give an assessment to yourself, to help yourself to have a better self view on your skills and capabilities. These are the first parts. Is it totally 100% sure? No, because it's only, we are talking about an 80% solution, not 100%. We do not have the capacities or even also the budget to really do an external assessment for each employee, each and everyone, and each and every time, right? So it doesn't make sense. So the question is, do we need a 100% solution? And that is the way we think we're starting. And a part of that, which is also important, there are many skills we're using in hiring topics of filling positions, which are only JSON skills, which are not named, because, we're looking for a job who are using, I don't know, a special programming language, and there's no one in the company who has that skill. So the question is here, is there any help and any AI to support? Yes, there is any, to see other people most likely can learn these new skill, which is nearly near in the neighborhood of something which I already have, or see in the past of a career that how fast someone, an individual talent, is able to adopt a new skill or learn a new skill. And these is decision support for hiring and deployment movements for HR professionals and also for our businesses, right?
Thanks, Ben.
Maybe, Maika, you can add something on that.
Yeah, and just I think this is I mean, you brought up a great point. You mentioned the self-assessments, right? And the AT. I think this is also what I find so fascinating about where we're hopefully moving is that yes, I think in a world where data and openness and lifelong learning is becoming so important, we're also looking at, like you said, employees doing that for themselves, assessing themselves against skills. Yeah, maybe also receiving automated recommendations on what are skill sets that might be adjacent or complementary to your existing skill set based on a self-assessment, maybe a manager assessment or peer feedback that you've requested, and that's the important bit, entered in a system. I mean, that requires trust of employees to make information about themselves, provide data on themselves, on how they view themselves, request feedback from peers or managers that is then captured in a system, right? So that these data can be used by systems internally, for instance, to give you recommendations that on maybe skills you could develop or content you could learn in order to deepen or accelerate your skill building. Provide data, maybe also interests, so that then you could potentially receive recommendations of roles or jobs that might be of interest to you, including a recommendation of what are some skills that are maybe transferable. So let's take Bernd as an example. I said before, maybe Bernd gets a reminder that he might also apply for a job in data insights or in sales. Maybe I get a reminder that rather than just doing learning and talent, I could actually go back into role and talent acquisition based on the skills that I have, including some notion on what are skills to build. But it does require, and I have seen the word culture in the chat, but it does require, of course, an openness and a willingness on, first of all, on the sides of the organization to allow that, but then also, of course, on behalf of an employee to create that data transparency and provide that insight about themselves. So I think it's not just going to be companies asking for self-assessment or for running assessments as we've done in the past. I remember automotive in the plant, everybody had to complete an assessment and their managers. But I think it's really going the way where we will expect employees to take charge of their own skill building and career development, if it's only as a first start by providing data, right? And then they can be helped in that development.
Makes a lot of sense. Hey, John, just do a quick time check. We still got a good deal of content. I'm looking at some of these questions. I think we might answer them. So maybe we move on, and
sure.
I'll come back to you the next little panelist break.
No problem.
Okay, cool. So let's keep going here. So I think both Bernd and Heike teed this concept up for us really well. But I think one of the first steps is really understanding the relationship between competencies and skills. And it's important to understand that the way that we think about it is, competencies are the what. They're more objective. They're slower to change, perhaps. Skills, on the other hand, are really the how, right? They're market driven. They're constantly changing, or they're changing at a much more rapid pace. The example I like to give is an account executive in a large organization. We'll say Salesforce. I spent about 7 years at Salesforce before coming to Eightfold. I was doing product marketing, so I had a firsthand account to this because I work with AEs all the time. The skills it took to be successful as an AE was much different than, say, 10 years ago, right? But the objective for that role, still the same: carry a quota, sell, execute transactions. To hit your goal 10 years ago, AEs had to be they had to have much more of a technical skill set, because they didn't have access to all the specialists. They didn't have access to solution engineers, for example, where today there's, the company has grown up. It's ginormous. There's so much resources. So for an A, things like negotiation or organization skills or cross-functional leadership and influence, much more important. So when you separate the two, you can really have the objective outcome-focused expression of skills that is the competency. The reality, though, is that I think most organizations conflate the what and the how often. And it's natural, I think, to do so. The challenge here, due to the conflation of the what and how, the outcome and the skills to achieve the outcome, the example I like to give is, this really causes. So the example on the slide there, this causes organizations to constantly update competencies every time. For example, they introduce a software or process or way of working, versus really going to evaluate talent based on their ability to achieve the outcome of a role. And how do you know that this will change? It's the fact that you have to understand skills are fungible. They do change, but they can be applied to other roles across an organization. So the way that this kind of manifests itself, we see, and this is just one example from a Fortune 100 company, we see a very low functional overlap of how orgs evaluate skills. And first off, I'll point out the tall bar there on the right, 200,000 roles as defined by this company. And I'm no HR practitioner myself, but that seems like a lot of roles, perhaps too many. Bern, I'll defer to you on that. B, the most prevalent skills here is found in less than 20,000 of the roles. So if you're just relying on keyword functional matching, there's really no relationship between the skills at the keyword level, and thus no opportunity to drive mobility. So it's no wonder that employees are limited to internal mobility opportunities, because there's really no way to reconcile the overlap between the skills and the competency across the org. And that's what we need to solve. So, Bern, Heike, go back to you. Bern, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, especially in times. Yeah, go on.
Well, I was just going to ask you, how do you at Bayer see the relationship between the competencies and skills?
Well, so skills, as you said, specific learned abilities that will give you required to perform a given job successfully. Absolutely. That is also what we see at Bayer. And the competency is more the knowledge or behaviors that lead you to be successful in a job. So like analytic abilities, problem solving, so really more broader. That is the competencies. And the skills is more really the handling accounts, right? Coding, or as a software developer, or in computer programming, or a foreign language proficiency. That is a skill. That is not a competency. So both is important. But if it comes here to, and in the future, our jobs are not anymore the same like in the past, where you are working 5 years in a role and switch after 5 years again. So we are more coming in a more fluent work. So at the moment, I'm acting in 3 different projects, right? Where I need only a part of my time. And I'm working more or less in a flexible and agile HR department where we have also IT people in, where people from communications are in, and we are in flexible projects. And there is much more important that I have my competencies to be learning agile and to be analytic and to be problem solving driven. But at the end, there are many skills which I need in different projects. And there is also the part where we see how we can move our talent and workforce for future ready, very agile, very fast, and very short term amount. Here in the 90s, I have changed my job maybe every 5 years. Nowadays, I have each year 3 or 4 different projects where I'm assigned to. So it's quite different from the past.
Interesting. Heike, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm sort of like I have an eye on the chat as well. I think there was a fantastic brought up of just as Bern said. I mean, roles change, and I think then, well, I wouldn't call it the new world of working, but I think the current world of working is like Bern described, at least at Bayer. That's what we see, and I guess it's the same elsewhere. You do have different types of projects. So in the chat there was mention of that attitude is also is another important factor. It's your skills, it's your competence, and your experience, but there's also attitude, and I want to stress that because that's a great comment and then totally resonates with what we're seeing currently. Is I think it goes back to that willingness of employees. I think as skills are so agile and you need different combinations of skills and new skills for the type of work that you do. It's really important. Also, I think that first of all, companies give that space to employees to develop and bring that message home, but then also for the individuals to have that attitude to literally sort of like rework your skill set on a consistent basis. I mean, the times where you sort of like where you are and stay an expert in whatever field without constantly upskilling are definitely gone. I mean, I'd argue it was never really the case, but then now again with the speed of technological advancement and change that we're currently seeing, it's adamant that people have that attitude where they do self-assess, right? Where they do share information about current skills and have that openness to keep working on themselves, to upskill and reskill, right? So even if you believe you have a skill today, doesn't mean that it's still a skill tomorrow, right?
Yeah, the attitude topic is really interesting to me, and it kind of goes to I think Mitchell here talked about measuring attitudes. I think it's connected to EQ and soft skills, which, as we all know, is really tough. Not only really tough to measure, but also a sensitive topic oftentimes, because you're talking about someone's personality in many cases, right? And so assessing someone's personality can be sensitive and tough to convey in a professional way. Let's see here. Let's see if there's any more questions. John, any other questions we can ask to our panelists here?
Sure thing. This might be one for the end, actually. I was going to ask about, Gary has a question about asking people as a way of creating a skill profile. I don't know if you see that question as from earlier on. I think it's about trust. There's been a couple of things around trust here. What evidence can make us confident that people are capable of making accurate assessments of our own skills, or that people are able to accurately assess the skills of others? This is maybe where the AI element comes in, right?
Yeah. It's kind of getting to our punchline. Maybe we'll table that for a second.
We'll save that.
Cool. All right, Bern, you are up, my friend. Tell us about Dynamic Skills Framework, putting into work.
Well, that is a very good example, which is actually also pressing in the last months, me and the businesses in IT, especially in times where skills and abilities are needed for roles that are, we know from the job market, are very, very rare to find. So the cybersecurity analyst and talent with these skills is extremely difficult to recruit, really hard to fill roles. And we have to get a little bit creative, right? In the example, the business demand for data cybersecurity is extremely high. We currently have, as taught today morning, 14 external positions posted globally, which means we're looking for more than 50 new employees. And however, in the talent market in that regions is really highly competitive, right? And we have to hold on our competition among other employers, even strong, attractive brands like Google, Amazon, Facebook, BMW, and you name it. Every employee understands that is not an easy task. So therefore, it is obvious to look for the actual qualifications, skills, and abilities in professionals who can close the skill gaps quickly on the jobs by relatively easy support. So in our research, we have significantly increased the potential talent market in one move. If the talent of the financial auditor groups are taken into account for that specific role, the relevant hiring managers on the IT side, they quickly understood this after we made the suggestion by means of AI analysis and also data confirmation. If we see those people working in those kind of roles and compare the capabilities and the skills of those people, really, really close. This is also not new. Already in 2017, I remember a case coming from the pharma business in a small town in Germany, Wuppertal, 150 positions in a small city in Germany to fill in 6 months. However, there were no talents as experts in production for pharmaceutical clean room production of biological, genetically vital drugs, right? In that place, in the radius of 100 kilometers, there were no talents around. And at the end, we were only able to fill those positions in that time because we widened the talent group to those people who are working in the food industry. Because the beer brewery, so German beer is a nice product. But if you are a beer brewer, you have to work in the clean room, like the same conditions we are looking for those talents we have in the pharma production. And therefore, we are took those kind of workers into account, and we have to fill these gaps. And that is what the AI will help us in the future. Even transformation of organizations where we see we do not need AS400, we need more cloud computing, these extreme example. That is the way we have to go on for the future. And AI is only able to help us in identifying those kind of overlaps. We are in the changing world, right? Changing markets, and in front of the next new normal. So I don't know when Corona will finish or not. I think it will be a part of our next years to come. But developing a new skill set in areas of AI or software as a service, or remote collaboration is essential to maintaining productivity and also to be business ready for us as Bayer. So we have a purpose in our or the mission statement is health for all, hunger for none. So, and that is really a very important purpose. We are driven by 100,000 employees worldwide, right? And with the relationship between some roles, and I mentioned before that we have already more than 598 global roles defined. And if you look on the career website, we have posted more than 2,000 different positions. But there are many of the roles in different job families. So maybe RD, maybe IT, maybe supply chain, where we're looking for project manager. And there is so many overlaps that at the end, we are not looking for 598 different type of people. So at the end, we maybe end up with 20 or 30 different skill sets. And even that helps us for the internal movement and for the internal flexibility. So we have an increasing demand in the business area of sales and marketing. And there are maybe some of our enabling functions are too oversized at the moment. So, and even to make really a fluent and a free flow, talent flow available, that is possible if we are concentrating on skills and capabilities. and not anymore on the career history or past experience, right? And that is the foundation of the be future ready in that what will come in the future.
And we talk about what's required to really build this, and it seems like there's two big pieces. Can you talk us through this a little bit?
I love that. Especially Heike. Give me the first thoughts on that. Okay. Here's really the beauty of using a deep self-learning artificial intelligence and associated capabilities for truly intelligent and integrated talent management with a very good user experience. Using data at the hand and the ability to predict future talent flows realistically, accurately, we at HR can finally empower then the business of Bayer and proactively plan today and not just called in the future by the manager. So often that's something happening. A manager called us, hey, I need a new employee, go HR, do my request. So we are as a internal service provider. That is not really the future about. With the technology and with our also starting HR journey at Bayer, we can proactively check in with the business and announce that we will have in 6 to 8 months skill gaps and not that future. And even we can do it before the business has realized it before, right? And therefore, with this power of AI and the power of data, we can predict the future. And then, and that's my personal opinion, not the from Bayer, I would underline that, if you as an HR organization in your enterprise will not be in 2030, so it's only 9 years ago, will be ready to predict the skill gaps which the business will have in the future without knowing that the business had that already, then you will be not anymore any value driver for the business. So then you are obsolete. So talent information of all employees, including skills, capabilities, summed up with personal future aspirations for those talent, those individuals, which are moving and changing very fast in this new generation Z, right? And to match those talents internally to the right opportunities to grow and develop, together with gig projects, with internal job recommendation, mentor relationships, recommended learning, AI career inspirations, and many more to come. These will be only the help to make real data prediction for the future. And that is something where we as HR can make ourselves a value-driven support of the business. Otherwise, we are only service provider and we can be outsourced anyhow. So that doesn't make any really sense. So therefore, I would say data is gold, and with skill as a currency, we can start really to start on the future where a career hub, not for employees only, for manager view and HR professional views, give you really the ability to make actual workforce planning, skill future gap planning, and really help the business to survive in the future. Because, there was today another call from 84 that I heard about where people, profit, and planet, and the people part, people is key, even for us as Bayer. If we are not ensuring that we have the right workforce, the right skills, and the right capacities in the future for the right business areas, there's no way to survive, right? And so we as HR, we can enable that. And with the help of AI and technology, we will do that. Heike,
excellent.
You can add something maybe.
And this nicely leads into the next slide. I totally confirm what Bernd has said. It's interesting because we speak financial planning. I mean, we speak. I mean, literally the thing. I mean, e-commerce marketing, right? We've been doing that. I mean, people have been doing that for at least for a century now. Using data in order trying to erode where is your new customer groups coming up, and how can I best sell products. And yes, indeed, we should probably start looking at our talent, and then skills will enable us to do so very much in a similar way to sort of like make these buy, borrow, or build decisions, just as Bernd said. So we're not sort of like currently facing a shortage in labor of a certain kind, but we see that coming, and we can plan to recruit or contract, that or skill, that talent, knowing how long it's going to take and what it costs. And we can do so, we can plan also and put the budget aside. So it definitely competency models and a dynamic skill framework are going to help organizational planning. I also believe that there is beside that, there's huge benefits also for not only for the talent and for the business organization, because it does help career pathing and succession planning. But I think there is also huge benefits for the employee experience, right? Because the same data that can be used to sort of like holistically look at your workforce and your organization, the same data can help an individual to actually take control of their career. Yeah, the recommendations in terms of what are skills you should further develop or add to your portfolios based on your skills. What are maybe roles that you might not have considered, but that might be of interest to you? That whole sort of like aspect of moving talents through the organization on non-traditional career paths, I think that has huge potential also for the individual employee, right? And given a situation where we all know that also, I mean, company jobs aren't as secure as they used to be in the past. Organizations are changing, business parts are being divested or acquired. Yeah, the more employee flexibility and ability is gonna benefit the individual, because their employability is going to grow internally and or also on the external job market. Because again, let's face it, employees don't necessarily stick with one company their whole career life. So but again, here's a chance, and if we get it right, speaking about that, our high potential talent, helping them progress their careers by data, coming up proactively with recommendations of where they should apply, moving them through the organization is gonna increase engagement, which then again leads to helps retention of top talent, and again transforms into better company outcomes. So it's a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
It's a total win-win situation.
Heike, I think your pup loves this slide.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My daughter has just come home, so my dog needs to inform me that she's in front of the door.
No worries at all. So we're gonna close this thing out here in a second. We have about 4 minutes. Did want to talk about kind of our approach in working with innovative companies like Bayer. We've sort of built out this, a framework, a maturity model to walk through this process in a step-by-step way. And it really starts with building the foundation with the job organization. This is very functional. You draw the trees and understand the hierarchy, who reports to who, et cetera. Then you create the competency models, and this is focusing on compliance, leveling, compensation, et cetera. And then you start to get into the skills framework, building on top of the competency models. And this is actually an inflection point when you start to bring in, I think Bert and Heike both mentioned it, this concept of a talent intelligent platform built really to understand the skills for employees of today and going into the future. And then finally, the ultimate precipice here is the agile mapping of skills, roles, gigs over time. That's really nirvana. Heike, going back to you, how does this maturity model play out at Bayer? I think a lot of folks on the phone too are going to be asking, like, what is there any gotcha moments, any tips for people that are considering starting their journey?
It's a journey. I guess that sums it up nicely. I find the journey very exciting, and honestly, I could now speak about some of the hurdles and how to overcome them. I'm going to go back to something we discussed before, and you call it attitude, some call it culture. You might call it mindset. I really believe that if you go onto that telematurity journey and you wanna win it, right? The mindset is really the bit where you need to start. And yes, AI is fantastic, and we're experimenting with it. That Berend is leading that effort. So we got the technology in place. Yeah, we introduced learning experience platform. We build a career hub that's gonna help internal mobility. Yes, we desperately want to use big data to sort of like predict the future and make better strategic workforce planning decisions. So we're starting all that. And if I say we're starting, it means we're starting. The thing is, data are fantastic. However, they're only they're only going to be as helpful as the individual who's looking at this data is actually willing to interpret them and analyze them and trust them, right, and play with them. So I think what's really important is if you want to build that telematurity, you really also need to work on that mindset and do these projects, right? Start experimenting, share the successes, and try to inspire the people around you to come with you on that journey. And it's a little bit like with the skills. We don't know 100% where this is going, I can talk about a vision that I have, and I can do so passionately. However, is it really going to look exactly like this? I don't know, but it's worth trying. And I think you really need to get people along with that. It's like learning, right? I mean, you can bring a horse to the water, but you can't make the horse drink. So it's a little bit like that. We all know that data models and only work if you have a lot of data. So that means people at the end, there needs to be an individual who trusts you enough to provide you with data, with self-assessment, with data on their skills, with data on what they want to do, their aspirations. The more data I have, the better. But again, it requires an individual to play along and have the trust to also offer data. So the more trust, the more data I'm going to have, the more excitement and inspiration I can create in the company, the faster I'm going to move along on this journey. So it's a journey. I guess this is the tip I'd give everybody, and including people in my own company. So let's see how we go.
As the time is flowing, I just only have one tip: progression before perfection. Start now.
Brilliant. Thank you. This is I could probably listen and talk to you two all day. This has been really, really inspiring and helpful for me as someone new to Eightfold in the HR space. We are, I think, at time or a little bit over time. It wouldn't be a great webinar without a shameless plug, of course. Visit Eightfold AI if you like to learn more about how to put a dynamic skills framework to work. We can do a custom demo for you. I just wanted to, I guess, personally thank Bern and Heike again for participating and collaborating on this content. It really has been my pleasure. You too. I think this stuff is gold. And of course, for, thank you to John and Upleash for the partnership. And last but definitely not least, thank you to the audience that was able to join and all the engagement. I've seen so many questions and comments there on the side, the chat bar. It's been really cool to see. So I guess, John, back to you.
Yes, thanks very much, Ryan. That is sadly all we've got time for. It's been amazing to see everyone answering the other people's questions as well in the chat. It's absolutely flown by. And sorry we didn't get to ask as many questions as we could have, but that's just a testament to how incredibly engaged the webinar was. And thank you to our three brilliant speakers. We'll be sending around a recording of today for everyone who registered, not just people who attended. So do watch out for that. I think we'll try and get them to share the slides as well, because it was a really brilliant presentation. So watch out for your inboxes. Thank you for all your engagement and attendance today. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Excellent. Thank you.
Excellent. Bye-bye.